So, even though the Greek classification system puts everybody in their own caste, in their own bioengineered, cured state of predispositions and talents and special abilities, they understand both sides, but the outcome is still going to be one or the other. The reason why the outcome is going to be one or the other is because you can't have too much life and you can't have too much death. And so I've been called a hypocrite. And at first I was like, kind of I was offended by it. Then I'm like, wait, hold on a second. I called the doctors and all the nurses and everything hypocrites because they're trying to take a life by saving a life or save a life by taking a life type of thing. And is that correct? Well, I mean, if you're trying to save someone's life, why are we giving them a path for them to be destroyed at some point? And but here's the other side of it too. Why isn't the system giving people the choice? And so if you can understand both sides of the argument and articulate it and give people the opportunity to choose which side they want to stand on, then being a hypocrite is not a bad thing. Okay? Because it means that you understand both sides. And so, yes, I'm a proponent for life. Absolutely. And I definitely sold J juice as a life-giving formula. It is. But it's not only the J juice. Now with the evolution of it, and then now with the Jilly juice mentality, since it's evolved several times over, the J juice is a catalyst to evolution, but you must get off it at some point and eat all the food in the food supply, deal with the pain, deal with all the stuff that you must deal with as far as the viruses, and you will never really take Jilly juice the way you did in the beginning ever again. Hey, if you want to do a couple shots, like anything, do a couple shots, even like 15, 20 years down the road. I don't need to, okay? I don't feel I need to. My geographical location and my lifestyle will determine my body weight, so I'm not trying to control that. I just need to adapt to wherever I'm at. And so being called a hypocrite means that you are entertaining both sides. But where the term hypocrite is not going to resonate so pejorative is when you finally say, okay, I understand both sides of the issue. Now, I'm going to give you both sides of the information in layman's term. I'm going to give you, the reason why this and the reason why that. And now you have a choice. Okay? You have a choice to understand salt, that no matter what, whether you take a vaccine or not take a vaccine, if that's the argument that you're trying to prove is right or wrong, if you take a vaccine or don't take a vaccine, the salt is going to help bring up the evolution and calm down anything that is aggressive and rogue programming so you can evolve. So you have to have the intention to evolve. If your intention is not to evolve, then the J juice would not be really good for you because it's going to force you to evolve in the beginning. Eventually you earn a cured state. We don't know when that's going to be, but even then that's not the ending point. Because once you reach a cured state, you then have to realize that you have to still evolve to new viral variants in a world of 7 billion people. Okay? So I'm glad that somebody called me a hypocrite, because it means that they are paying attention enough to know that I am covering both sides of an issue. And so what I challenge all of my Jilly Juice crowd, if you are in the activist world still, or you're still posting one-sided arguments, I challenge you to have somebody call you a hypocrite. I challenge you to say, that's fine, get the vaccine, because if you know a person's very immunocompromised and you know how aggressive the virus is, then you understand now the argument of why vaccines were invented to begin with. Will they be 100% in this society? Absolutely not. And we all know that. There's certain specific populations that may be more sensitive to aggressive viruses out there, but they still have to stay home and stay safe and not be in crowds, even if you are. And the vaccine still isn't 100%. Nothing's 100% when you're dealing with mitigating evolution, stopping evolution, because evolution is going to want to happen. Life's going to want to happen. You can't stop it 100%. And so being called a hypocrite is probably a compliment, because the person is paying attention and you've accurately and effectively covered both sides, because everyone's coming from a one-sided point of view. You're either for something or against something. You either think this is poison or you don't. You're either afraid of the virus or you're not. I mean, that's the binary-driven system of arguments, keeping people very controlled and stuck in their station in life. And so if you're called a hypocrite, now you're rising above your station, because you finally broke through from being on one side or the other. You finally understand both sides. Now you must give people the opportunity to say, okay, here is the choice. And you can still live despite getting a vaccine or not. You don't have to die from the virus or the vaccine if that is your purview. You can still live despite all the things that are going on. So as long as it's not something like a tornado coming out of the blue and you can't sidestep it for whatever reason. But that pretty much doesn't happen, because you'll have enough indicators to get you out of harm's way. So that's something that humanity is going to have trouble with. And so those that are on the JJ mentality, that's my next challenge to you, is to not only be called a hypocrite, okay, but to introduce and advocate for both sides and still say, yet the SALT and the JJ mentality will still have you live despite your choices. And so you can choose whatever you want, but the third choice will always supersede both sides and you'll still live. You won't die if you stay on track and deal with the pain. I mean, it's one thing to pick which side or the other and do the JJs and stop and go back into the system taking the cures, or stay on the JJs and be cured for a certain amount of time and then pass away from too much of a good thing, because you don't want to be in a cured state in a dynamic environment. Again, that's the third law of thermodynamics. A cured state does not survive a dynamic environment. So, but you have choices, okay? Despite all the mandates and all the fear campaigns and everything else, you have choices. And how do you articulate that to an audience that you are entertaining, that are so entrenched in their belief system? You have to be the one to rise above and learn how to articulate both sides of an argument and give that choice to people. Because do you really want someone to lose that job because they're afraid of taking a vaccine? Or you could say, you know, if you really want to live, I mean, here's the thing, take the vaccine, do jelly juice, deal with whatever predispositions. If you're at a job and you're not dealing with sensitive accounts that need the person to be 100% on par, then they could deal with their shit coming up, and they can take time off and tell their boss that they can take, sick days, because I think employers are supposed to give employees sick days if they have some kind of reaction to whatever virus or the vaccine, if that's what you did. And so if you're in a high level job where you're working with sensitive accounts, they're going to want you to be vaccinated. And if you don't want to be vaccinated, then you don't take your job seriously anyways, if that is the company's rule, okay? And so there are strategies to deal with the government's mandates, and you can still rise above. But that takes a very evolved jelly juicer to learn how to speak on both sides and graduate to be called a hypocrite. Once you're called a hypocrite, you understand now. And now you're also given another choice. I call the doctors and nurses hypocrites, but they haven't graduated to actually giving people the choice because they still scare people away from salt, symptoms, viruses, and pain. So yeah, I'm going to legitimately call them a choice, but I mean, I understand both sides. I understand that they probably understand both sides of it because they use electrolytes to bring you out of dehydration, but the end result is still death. So yeah, Hippocrates would be very appropriate. The god, or the god or the philosopher of medicine, and Asclepius and other gods that supported the gods of the medicine way back in antiquity. But we're not doctors and nurses, okay? And so even though they understand both sides, the end result's still the same. Death is the outcome in the medical holistic system. And so even though you're called a hypocrite because you understand both sides of an issue, but you now can graduate to give people the choice and tell them the salt is the regulator, regardless of the choice that you have made. And the person still has to want to evolve. Because even if they don't get the vaccine, they're going to stay home and deal with the virus anyways. That's the other side of it. So, promoting vaccines and promoting anti-vax still has the end result be the same. So then the argument is really moot. It's the introduction to salt and the symptoms, and the virus is not your enemy. That's the third argument. That is the third argument. And so I'm glad that some of my haters, so to speak, are listening to me, and that they understand that I am taking care of both sides. And being called a hypocrite is a compliment because they are paying attention. And you want people to pay attention, even if they don't buy into whatever side you're taking at the time. Because like I said, I'm like all about pro-life, but I understand death. But here's the thing, I'm not ramming life down anyone's throat. I'm still going to give you a choice, but I understand why it needs to happen. Does it have to happen to me? No. If I could save everybody, I would. But that is not the way of nature. Nature doesn't want you to save everybody's lives. Because if their lives were meant to be saved, they would be alive, and we wouldn't have as many people. Because when a person is on a death trajectory, they will trigger sexual reproduction. That's why death and reproduction go hand in hand. That's why war and birth, or war and love, go hand in hand. Because Mother Nature senses that when you're at war and when you're on the way out the door, meiosis must trigger. So if we had everybody on a life trajectory, they wouldn't want to procreate as much. I don't want to procreate as much. I can do it. All the plumbing's working, but I don't have that same drive like it. Now you're like, oh, you're menopausal. No, because when you're on a life trajectory and you're youthful and you're clear-headed and you're productive and you're dealing with the environment, you're adapting to the situation, you're just living. It's the reason why people procreate, because they already came to this world at a deficit, and the deficits are compounding, and so the body senses destruction, and so sexual hormones come to surface, and that's when people start feeling the chemistry, because it is a natural phenomenon to keep the human species going, that when Mother Nature senses there is destruction in that body, it needs to procreate. And that's why people who get diagnosable conditions, it's not surprising that they also get pregnant if they're in a relationship, or they were in an accident and they get pregnant not too long afterwards. Okay? So that's what I'm saying. At some point, you guys, when you're on the JJ mentality, you're not going to be looking for a mate. And if you're with a mate, you're not going to be like hot to trot, cannibalizing the other person. Now they'll try to cannibalize you, of course, because they're hot to trot and on the way out the door, and so they're looking to procreate all the time. That's when you say, okay, I could play both sides, but there is limitations. You don't want to be cannibalized by anyone, much less your husband or your own wife. okay? But you'll learn that balance. And so that this is now the evolution of the world, is that you have now a third choice. A third choice that will supersede everything. It is the choice that rules them all. And you can still live, but you got to feel something. And your life must be set up to deal with evolution. So yeah, cured state's great when you're trying to make a bunch of money. But here's the people who are making a bunch of money, like the nurses out there, because there's a nursing shortage, they're being used up. Yeah, the money's great, but what are they going to do with it? Okay, they're just going to buy more stuff or invest in stuff that when they're not going to be able to enjoy when they're finally used up to the point of where their body gives out. And so what is all that money for if you're not even around to enjoy it? You see what I'm saying? So that's the balance, you know. You can be in a cured state and just work and work and work and work until there's nothing left, and then all the money that you have that you just you piled away in your bank account is or you put it in your house, or you put it in a car, or put it into all these different baubles, and then you die. What was it all for? What did you work for? So those are the choices when it comes to being in a cured state. You get power, but for a short amount of time. And so now we are leveling the playing field. It's not about collecting all this material stuff. It's about being productive and giving back on an equal basis. As much as the earth gives to you, you give back. And you can still maintain and be productive. You're not on the hamster wheel trying to get someplace that there's nowhere to go. Everybody is racing right now to the bottom. Except for those on the JJ mentality who understand when to get off it. But everyone right now is racing to the bottom. And yeah, they might be making a shit ton of money, but when the virus kicks your ass and takes you down several notches, yeah, go on a trip for a second. That's fine. And then see you later. There's still money left in the bank to your next of kin or to the government if you have no next of kin. And they made money off your ass because you were too focused on making a shit ton of money, but you were not focused on quality of life and quantity of life. And quality and quantity of life is all about balance. But it's understanding both sides, being called hypocrite, and then still give people the choice and realizing that salt is the regulator and pain and symptoms and viruses are necessary. If you don't understand that, then yeah, you'll race to the bottom and hopefully you get something out of whatever you've been doing. So it wasn't all for naught. All right, bye.